Good morning, teacher. We're gonna talk about the Cold War. Our team is conformed for my teammate Mario Castillo and my Ruben Gonzalez.
The Cold War was a period of geopolitical tension between the Soviet Union and the United States and their respective allies after World War II. The period is generally considered to span to 1947 Truman Doctrine to the 1999 dissolution of the Soviet Union. The word cold is used because there was no large-scale fighting directly between the two superpowers. Still, they each support major regional conflicts known as proxy wars. While the West Bloc United States and Eastern Bloc Soviet Union generally espoused the economic theories of capitalism and socialism respectively, the US government supported right-wing governments and uprisings across the world, while the Soviet government funded communist parties and revolutions around the world. However, the conflict was mostly geopolitical. Each power had a nuclear strategy that discouraged a preemptive attack by the other side, on the basis that such an attack would lead to the total destruction of the attacker, the doctrine of mutually assured destruction. Aside from the nuclear arsenal development and traditional military deployment, the struggle of dominance was expressed via psychological warfare, propaganda campaigns, and espionage, embargoes, rivalry at sports events, and technological competition, such as the space race. The first phase of the Cold War began in the first 2 years after the end of the World War II, in 1945. The Soviet Union had been left with power over the former Nazi territories of the Eastern Europe. In contrast, the United States had extensive military and financial influence over the countries of Western Europe. It created the NATO military alliance in 1949. The US termed its global policy against Soviet influence containment.
The Berlin blockade was the first major crisis in the Cold War. The conflict expanded in 1949, victory of the communist side, the Chinese Civil War, and the outbreak of the Korean War. The URSS and the US completed for the influence in Latin America and the colonizing states of Africa and Asia. Other international disputes followed in the early 1960s. The President Kennedy faced a number of troubling situations in his own hemisphere. The Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961 and the Cuban Missile Crisis the following year seems to prove that the real communist threat now lay in the unstable protocoling third world. By the 1970s, both sides had started making a peace ideal ushering in a period that saw the strategic arms limitation tax and the US opening relationships with China and the strategic counterweight to the URSS. Soviet influence in Eastern Europe waned. In 1999, every other communist state in the region replaced its government with a non-communist one. In November of that year, the Berlin Wall has finally destroyed, just over 2 years after Reagan had challenged the Soviet premier in a speech at Brandenburg Gate in Berlin. Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall. By 1999, the Soviet Union itself had fallen apart. The Cold War has over.